It's time to get started. I've asked Brother Kevin Dixon if he'd lead us in prayer before we get going.
Loving Father, we thank you for another privilege to be here to study from your word. We pray, Father, that we will not divide your word, and we can all understand. Be with Matt and help him to remember the things that he studied. Pray for those that are sick and not able to be with us. Healing hand might be upon them to restore their health to them. Go with us. In Christ's name we pray, and amen.
Amen. All right, let's start there in verse 32. It says, "But call to remembrance the former days in which, after you were enlightened, you endured a great conflict of sufferings." And so, we're chapter 10, verse 32 of Hebrews. And so, call to remembrance the former days. What former days? After you were enlightened. What does that mean? Well, after they had, become Christians, after they understood the truth. And so, after you were enlightened, ye endured a great conflict of sufferings. Now, what is the context of that? When we're talking about Bible study, context is everything. Every time I have come across somebody that has come up with some sort of false doctrine, they typically have taken something way out of context. That's the whole thing with premillennialism. A lot of people believe in that, but they have to take a whole lot of passages out of context to get to where they are. And it's a sad thing, but people are always doing that. And let's not be guilty of the same thing. So what's the context? What does it mean that they endured a great conflict of sufferings? Well, if you go back to the book of Acts, and you look at really chapters 4 through 8, and in 8, I think it really amps up, and you really see what's going on here. But in Acts chapter 8, we see that these people, they're scattered abroad. And why are they scattered abroad? Because of persecution. So after these people, this is what the Hebrews writer is saying. After you became Christians, remember all those trials that you went through? Remember all that stuff that you had to deal with because of the conflict going on. The idea of being persecuted. That should be a building block for these people, right? They have already gone through something. For those of you that are married, you go through some things as a couple, and if you go through them and you're working together, you come out stronger on the other side of that conflict, whatever it is, and you just grow closer together. Well, that's really what ought to be happening with brethren when they go through things. Is they ought to come out on the other side stronger if they've been doing this together. And these people, they had become Christians, and then they endured all the things that they had seen before. And now, after having done that, then they're falling away. That's an interesting concept, isn't it? And here's another one of those verses. I think at the beginning I said that some people will say the book of Hebrews is not written to those that had fallen away. I really don't know. Like, there's so many verses that go along with this thought of that they had, they're once been enlightened, they had endured, but they've fallen away. Here's another verse about those things.
They also say that they were never truly converted.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
You're arguing with God, man.
But yeah, you know what though? I've heard brethren say this, that they're just like, well, and I don't know that there's any real harm in thinking that, except for the fact that you really don't get a good understanding of the book of Hebrews if you take it out of context like that. There's a lot of verses that are not going to make any sense, and so. I wholeheartedly believe. I've taught that over and over and over and over again because this book doesn't make a whole lot of sense if these people haven't fallen away. That they weren't once Christians and haven't fallen away doesn't make any sense. So they should be good and strong, but they're not. They have fallen back into Judaism now. Verse 33, I like this because there's an interesting word here. So partly being made a gazing stock, both by reproaches and afflictions, and partly becoming partakers with them that were so used. So here it is. Here's a gazing stock. What is that? What is a gazing stock?
The King James Version says it's a spectacle.
Yeah.
It says it's a person or thing gazed at by many, especially with contempt or curiosity.
Yep. So you remember back in medieval times, they still did that. This when they came over, and we had the colonies here. But sometimes people would be put in a stockade, and sometimes be put in stock right out in front of everybody for them to do what? To look at you. Yeah. Throw their rotten lettuce at you, which is always hilarious to me. Why they throw? They should be eating that stuff and not throwing it. I don't get that. And how come every time you've got a comedian and he's like on a show, they start throwing tomatoes at him? Who brought tomatoes? Like, really, who does that? But all that being said, the gazing stock, they're just there just as a spectacle, right? As somebody to just be gawked at. And that's what the Christians were that were under persecution. They were just looked at like, oh, those are weird people. That's not good. Yeah. Scoffed at. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, ridiculed. Yeah, just like the Lord. Yes. So I love this word. It's not one that we use all the time, but as a gazing stock. They were, basically, it gives this idea of being put in place and people just staring at them. And so they have partly being made a gazing stock, both by reproaches and afflictions. So, they're being looked down upon. People are saying bad things to them. And then, of course, there's just the afflictions, the persecution that they have to deal with. And so these things are kind of working together. That's why this imagery has been given. It says, and partly becoming partakers with them that were so used. So some people, and some of these, I wouldn't say, we can't say all, but we know that at least some were, because of them being Christians, because of the persecutions, these afflictions that they suffered and they had to endure through, they were done this way publicly. This was a public thing, and it was supposed to be a shameful thing. Now, of course, if you go back over to Acts chapter 5 and they get beaten for preaching Jesus, what is it that they do after they leave? They go leaping and rejoicing because what? They were.
It was an honor they thought to suffer.
Yep, they thought it was honorable that they were counted worthy to suffer shame for Christ's name. They thought that was a great thing. And so, how many people would think that today? I mean, really, think about that. We should feel that way. I remember having a conversation with somebody, and I had said something, and this guy said, well, he thought that would be offensive or an offensive phrase to use for someone that was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was, something, a denominational term. And I used it in a derogatory way, and they said, so, well, you know what? That's I wouldn't do that because you'd offend somebody. And I was like, well, and probably since then I've gone, I don't want to necessarily offend anybody, so I try not to do anything like that. But then in his response to me, he said, well, what if someone called you a Jesus freak? And I first of all, that was like such a denominational term. Like I didn't even, like nobody was going to call me that, I'm sure. But then like, when they're saying that, I was like, well, I don't care. Go ahead and call me a Jesus freak. I don't care. That, you know what? That actually may perfectly describe me. That's okay. I'm all right with that. That's not a derogatory term to me. I'm fine with that. But you know what? When it goes beyond that for, people can take some of that ridicule. They can take some of that from their family members. They can take some of that from friends, of course, initially friends. But in the long run, when it comes down to this physical persecution that these people were having to endure, it wasn't that they were called names. It was much more than that. We need to be willing to suffer, willing to suffer shame for our Lord. And I fear that there's probably not many that would be willing to do that. But verse 34 says, "For you both had compassion on them that were in bonds, and took joyfully the spoiling of your possessions, knowing that you have for yourselves a better possession and an abiding one." So, all those people that were taken into, prison for being Christians, what did they do? Well, they used it as an opportunity to help them. They didn't, if they were ridiculed, they were, hurt by this persecution, the brethren took care of each other. This is one of those things. I know we mention this from time to time, but I think it's worth repeating right now. And that is that, when it comes down to it, brethren ought to be taking care of each other. If we have a need, then we need to help each other. That's really all there is to it. I'm not sure if I've told this, but I remember working with the congregation, and overall it was a good congregation. They had elders, and they wanted to hold to the truth, and that was good. But they're very stingy when it came to helping people. And now I say that they would help anybody that came in off the street. But we had brethren in our own congregation that were suffering, and they were hurting financially. And you know what would happen to people off the street? Oh, you need $200 to pay for your electricity bill, and sometimes that's a low figure. Well, you need $200. You need $400. Here, let's help you out. We're going to help you out. We'll do this for you. And they did that all day long. And then we had someone who was in serious need. I can't remember all of the circumstances, but it was a single father, had twin sons, and I'll tell you what, the twins were a handful. They were. And we have some twins here, but they weren't like that. If you think that they're rough, just don't try to think worse than that. But in all seriousness, he was struggling. He was struggling big time, and he asked for help. And you know what what was asked of him? Oh, well, here, let's sit down. If we're gonna give you any money, then you need to bring us your bank statements, and let us look at your bank statements, and tell us what your plan is. And it was like, whoa, wait a second. Help Joe Schmo off the street that smells like cigarettes and booze, and then your brother in Christ is over here, and you're not helping him like that. Oh, that just kind of, does that not eat you up a little bit? I mean, that hurts. I mean, yeah, sure. If someone is being irresponsible, then yeah, maybe we do need to sit down and have some financial counseling. Maybe there's somebody really good in the congregation that's able to do that. Yeah, let's do it. But man, first thing, let's. I love the fact that here we have that benevolence program where we are allowed to just give a certain amount of money to what we deem a worthy cause. And really no questions asked about that, right? I like that. We can be wise in and of ourselves and know, look, I don't need to go and just throw this money away and give it to somebody that isn't going to use it properly. But when we know of a good case, and yeah, that's good. They were sharing in everything that they had. We know that according to Acts chapter 2, that they were sharing things in common. But here it is. They were taking their possessions, and they were giving it. They were giving it to each other. They were sharing because they, what's the reason? Knowing that ye have for yourselves a better possession and an abiding one. So they had a hope of heaven. They were going to go to heaven one day, and so it didn't really matter. So many people are really concerned about what they can get in this life. And we do have to live. I get that, right? We have to live. Probably in our society, if you don't own a car, you're extremely limited. It used to be the case that, you could go and there was like this one central place in town and everybody would go to it. Now, businesses pop up all over the place. Houses have gotten further and further out. And the reason for that is because we have automobiles. We're able to go and drive longer distances in shorter periods of time. We don't have to saddle up the horse and make a day of it. We can just go. And now, in our current society, if you don't have a vehicle, you do become extremely limited, right? Things like that, probably be fairly frowned upon and probably not, financially conducive if you lived in a tent all the time. You'd have to have a place to go. You'd have to put that up somewhere. You'd have to rent, some spots to do that. It just would not be feasible all the time. So, that might work in other places where they live differently, but here, you might have to have a car, and you have to have a house, you have to have those things. But does that mean that we need to go and get the best of the best? Not necessarily. We don't need to do that. We want to take care of ourselves, but we want to be reasonable and realizing, keeping all this in perspective, that this world is not our home. We're just here for a little while. This is not our destination. And because of that, we're not going to heap up for ourselves treasures upon this earth. But, we're really more concerned about heaven. And that's what they were doing. They were sharing on what they had because they knew that they had a better position. It was heaven. They knew that they had that. And so, moving on, it says in verse 35, cast not away, therefore, your boldness, which hath great recompense of reward. So, don't cast away your confidence and lose your reward. Don't do that. When you think about this, as far as an inheritance is concerned, we have this inheritance if we are faithful. Is there a way that we could, just get rid of an inheritance? There are a lot of people that would just financially, I've heard of so many people that would cheat their family members, own siblings, out of finances when a parent dies. I don't know how many times that's happened. I know that you have. I see some shaking heads. You know that happens. People do that a lot. People are very selfish, and correct me if I'm wrong. But if you don't have anything really financially tied up into it, I know that we can complicate matters. I know that in particular, I know of a family member I have that took care of the payments for my grandmother's house for a long time. And you know what? As far as I see it, I think it's fair that when the inheritance time comes around, what do they do? Hey, they put that money in. That comes off the top, give it back to them. And then they can split it, That's only fair, that's only seems fair. If there's no situation like that, just split it up evenly. But people will go and they'll say, you know what, I deserve more. And they'll give some sort of reasoning for that. And so they go off and they'll sell what they got and waste that inheritance. I heard of someone that was given $50,000 to split up between, I think, 2 or 3 siblings. And there were 3 of them, I think is what it was. And so, they're supposed to split that 3 ways. Next thing you know, all that money is gone. And nobody else got it but the one person who was in charge of the will. That didn't sit right. People are going to waste their inheritance. They have these people here, these Hebrews. They have put time and effort into this, and they're wasting their inheritance. They're getting rid of it by leaving the faith. They might think, well, you know what, I like this better, or we'll be just fine. But no, that's not the case. You're not going to be just fine. So many people actually have that attitude in the religious world. Oh, God's not gonna, send us to hell. I mean, God's a loving God, right? And so because God's a loving God, we're not gonna go to hell, for little things, just because we didn't obey in this, it doesn't matter, and maybe they based that on the way that they were treated by their parents, and maybe their parents weren't firm, and so they live life going, you know what, I can do whatever I want, God's going to take care of me. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what I do. A lot of people have that attitude, but they are just taking what reward they could have, and they're squandering it because they choose not to obey. Verse 36, for ye have need of patience, that having done the will of God, ye may receive the promise. So you have need of patience. That is that they need to, hold on to that. Now, sometimes there's another word that sometimes is used with patience, and there's a difference in the two. But the other one is long suffering. The idea of long suffering and patience, they go hand in hand. But long suffering actually leads to patience. Long suffering is the process of getting patience. Patience is the result of long suffering. And so there is a difference. You do have to suffer long to get patience. Endurance, yeah. Yeah, patience and endurance are really closely related. I've seen people break those three down, but I think patience and endurance really go hand in hand. And then long suffering is the result of those, or is the thing that leads up to those things. But they have need of patience. They should have been growing, but they haven't. Having done the will of God, that you may receive the promise. So they should have been working this whole time in growing as Christians. They should have done that, but it's kind of it's kind of the reverse of this. I knew so many girls in college that they were in relationships with guys where they weren't appreciated for one reason or another, and for some reason I took on the brother role a lot of times, and these girls would come and they'd say, oh, well, so and so they're doing this, and they'd get all upset. And I was real hard-hearted about some of that stuff. I was like, just ditch him, just don't do it. He doesn't care. If he cared, he wouldn't be doing that stuff. Do you want to deal with this the rest of your life? You're going to marry this guy? You're going to deal with this all the time? And they'd be like, well, I've put so much time. He's not an investment. Don't do that. He's not an investment. Just move on. Kick the guy. Let's go. Go find someone better. Quit whining to me. And so it's just like, man, you just got to go and do something different. And, the reverse of that is, they should have had an investment here. They should have been invested into this relationship with God, and they weren't invested. They should have come out of the end of those persecutions and been much better, and then they weren't. They didn't. They didn't have that patience. They needed more patience. And that it's interesting that term is even used because, like what we were talking about before, of long suffering. They did have long suffering, but it didn't end up in patience, did it? They didn't endure. They didn't endure to the end. Verse 37. Anybody have any comments before we move on? I've just kind of been going.
It also says again here, it repeats it, that you may receive the reward of the promise if you do the will of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't do the will of God,
yep,
that promise is not going to be for you.
Yeah. I love how when you're looking at these verses, and of course we know what's coming in chapter 11, but like you're already seeing, this warming up to this thought. Here's some, you need this endurance. Well, you want to know some people had some patience? Here you go. Here's a long list of people who endured to the end. That's what you need. You need to have this endurance. You need to be able to work through that. Anybody else before we move on? Verse 37, for yet a very little while, he that cometh shall come, and shall not tarry. But my righteous one shall live by faith, and if he shrink back, my soul hath no pleasure in him. But we are not of them that shrink back unto perdition, but of them that have faith unto the saving of the soul. So go back to verse 37. For yet a very little while, he that cometh shall come, and shall not tarry. So, we don't know when Christ is going to come back. We don't know when he's going to return. In Matthew 24, verse 36, it says, But of that day and hour knoweth no one, not even the angels of heaven, neither the Son, but the Father only. And so, they didn't know. Nobody knew, except for the Father. There's a, I know that there's a song, and I think John Mayer was the one who sang the song, but he talked about in that song, he says, by the time I recognize this moment, it's gone. And so here it is, a moment in time here that that's going to happen. It's going to come, and he's not going to tarry. It's going to come, and then it's going to go. Now, some point to this and say that this right here, this verse in particular, is a reference to the fall of Jerusalem. And but the problem that we have with this is that the persecutions don't stop with the fall of Jerusalem. When he comes, he's not going to tarry. Now, for those that might be premillennialists, that doesn't matter. They're going to continue to think that. But that being a false doctrine in and of itself, Christ is going to come, and it's going to happen. He's not going to hang around and go, "Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Well, hold on. I'm going to wait till you're ready." There's a lot of people that actually believe something kind of like that as far as doctrine is concerned, and I hope I'm not stepping on any toes, but if so, I have to, and I apologize, because that's not what I want to do. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But I've heard a lot of people say over the years that, people I know very well and I respect say things similar to this. I say, the Lord is going to return when everybody that is going to possibly saved is saved. Now, I've got a big problem with that. Yeah, that's one of those problems. There's not. I don't know of a verse that would even suggest that. But here is something that James teaches, and something about being a respecter of persons. Now, if that happens, is God not then being a respecter of persons? Because He's just going to allow. Just he's choosing. Maybe this is the elect. He's choosing.
That's very Calvinistic.
Yeah.
That is quite Calvinistic.
It is very Calvinistic. Yeah. Oh man. Let's just wait until everybody's got an opportunity. Everybody's got an opportunity. Everybody does.
But if you're on the list of the chosen people, it doesn't matter when you come.
That's right. That's right.
All of them called, and it's the responsibility of those that are called to respond.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's the same thing. We have at home. We were I think it was last Christmas or Christmas before. We were given a dinner bell, and we thought, well, this is fun. But when we were living there in the house over there, we're like, well, we don't need this because we can just go, hey, dinner's ready, and everybody could hear us from the kitchen. But in the house we have now, the kids' rooms are on the second floor, and then the playroom is on a third floor. And we hooked that thing up at the bottom of the steps because we got tired of yelling up there and nobody hearing us, and us walking halfway up and going, dinner's ready. And so now we ring that thing for dinner, and they come running. Every now and then, Titus is becoming bad about this. He likes to play up there. And we'll ring that bell. Everybody will come down, and then we're sitting there going, where's Titus? And so then we'll ring the bell, and we'll yell up there, Titus, come on down, And there have been a couple of occasions where like, well, we're not waiting, and then he'll come down and be like, what's going on, guys? Like, why are you not waiting on me? No, we're not waiting on you, buddy. It's dinner time. You come when the bell rings, or you're getting left behind, and I'm sorry if there's nothing left for you. So we have that for a reason. All of that being said, there's going to come a time, and if you're not ready, it doesn't look good. We've got to be ready. And there's not going to be a time of, where Jesus comes, and going back to the whole premillennialism thing. You know what? Christ, they say Christ is going to return. He's going to reign on earth for 1,000 years, right? And then, or whatever, they all these different ones believe different things. And if he's going to return, well, you know what? You don't have to be faithful now, because if you live until he returns and you go, oh, well, now I can be faithful. Now I need to do that. I need to make things right at that point. No, he's going to come, and he's not going to tarry.
The 10 virgins doesn't say that.
Yeah.
Decide which side the virgin you're going to be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're gonna be ready when it calls, when the bridegroom calls, or are you gonna be in darkness, groping around, wishing that you'd been ready? Yeah, no, that's that's a scary thought too when you think about the virgins there, and you had the wise ones and the foolish ones, and that's a scary thought when you think about the meaning of that, isn't it? That I've got to make sure that I'm ready. Because when the day comes, I've got to be ready. I've got to be. I can't say, well, you know what? My preacher, he didn't preach the right sermons to motivate me in the right way. The elders didn't tell me what I need to do or whatever. No. It's it is all up to the individual. Sometimes I've worked with congregations, and the elders would come up to me and say, well, you know what? You need to preach these sermons. You need to be more dynamic. You need to do all this. Because you never know when you're going to bring someone to the Lord. And I'm like, yeah, well, sure, I get that. First of all, you know what? Thank you for thinking way more highly of me than you probably ought to, because I don't believe my preaching alone is going to save people. I think that you've got to sit down one-on-one with people and open up the Bible and study. Man, I wish that were the case, though. I wish I could just get up and I could say everything that needed to be said, and people just kind of file down the aisle and, become Christians and, make things right with the Lord, whatever. But that's just typically not the way it works, because it's up to individuals. We have responsibility for ourselves. While maybe a nicely timed lesson might be beneficial for a person from time to time, that's really, it's not the job of the preacher to come out and to, make sure everybody is saved. What he does is he gets up and he preaches the word, and it falls on those soils, and it's up to the soil as to whether or not that word grows within their heart. And so that's all it is, we're kind of getting close on time here. Let's see if we can't finish up chapter 10 here. It says, but my righteous one shall live by faith, and if he shrink back, my soul hath no pleasure in him. And so, my righteous one shall live by faith. In Habakkuk 2 and verse 4, it says, behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright in him, but the righteous shall live by faith. And so the righteous, should live by faith. And this is, don't get confused here. This is not still talking about Christ, but Christ is coming. And then what are we to do? We're supposed to be living by faith. The emphasis is on us, here. Romans 1 and verse 17, for therein is revealed a righteousness of God from faith unto faith, as is written, but the righteous shall live by faith. We are to live by faith. What does that mean? What does it mean to live by faith?
Faith in what you're working for.
Yeah. So we're
This is our faith.
yeah. Yeah, we're following those scriptures. We're working towards heaven. We got to do that. If we're not doing that, we're not living by faith. And it says, and if he shrink back, that's the whole thing that we've been talking about this whole time throughout the entire book of Hebrews. If he shrink back, my soul hath no pleasure in him. And if you go back, if you fall away, that's not a good thing. Have no pleasure in a person that does that. Verse 39, but we are not of them that shrink back unto the perdition, but of them that have faith unto the saving of the soul. So we're not supposed to shrink back unto perdition. That is destruction. We're not supposed to fall away and do that, but we're to have that faith that is the saving of the soul.
Those verses 38, 39, not once saved, always saved in the water.
Oh yeah, that's right. If you didn't hear him, he said, Bill said that both of those last two verses there, just kind of knock that once saved, always saved back into the water. It's just destroyed. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And again, we've been looking at this whole thing. Is it possible for a person to fall away? The book of Hebrews, over and over and over again, says what? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If someone says, this maybe this is a little bit of a funny response, but someone says, hey, you know what? You can't fall away from God. You can't fall away from God. Be like, oh, I guess you haven't read the book of Hebrews. Because when you read the book of Hebrews, you'll find over and over again that it is possible to fall away. It is possible.
It talks about the just shall live by faith. How do you know what that faith is unless you open the book up? Romans 10:17, faith comes by hearing.
Yep.
By studying.
Yeah, that's right.
If you show up here 3 times a week, go home there and crack the book.
Yeah.
You're not going to learn a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I know I harp on that a little bit, but if you just come and even if you came all the time, so a lot of people won't even do that. But if you came all the time and you came Sunday morning Bible class, you came to hear the sermon, you were there for worship on Sunday morning and Sunday evening, and then you came back on Wednesday, if that's all you ever did, you'll never grow. You'll get these little bit of progress, but guess what? You're also doing at the same time. You're getting a little bit of progress. You're also forgetting a little bit at the same time. You have to be in the Word all the time to remember it. You got to do this all the time. You got to be, doing more than just what we're doing here in Bible class. You got to do more than that. As we're, finishing up, we got just a minute or two. Let's look at the questions in your study book. You got the memory verse there. It's optional for you guys. Number 2, though, it says, what is the entire context of Hebrews 10? Please get this one. Hebrews 10. All right, Hebrews 10. We gotta.
The blood of bulls and goats is imperfect. Christ is perfect sacrifice.
Yeah. When you look at the entirety, that is summed up. You can sum it up in one word. And that is that this whole thing is talking about sacrifices. It starts off with what? It starts off with the bulls and goats, right? You got the bulls and goats, and then you've got Christ. And this whole thing is talking about sacrifices. You got to keep it in that context. How does Hebrews 10, 24, and 25 apply to the issue of missing worship?
I said continued absence shows a lack of love for the brotherhood and a lack of will to grow.
Yeah. I've said for a long time that when you're looking at someone that does not come, you know where their heart is, and it's not in the Lord.
Minded to exhort one another, and you're not
Yeah.
the right one to exhort. You can't edify and build anybody up, exactly.
Yeah. You know what? And I think that's a good thing for us to hear, is we've got to encourage each other. We've got to build each other up. But also, it's our responsibility, those of us that are here right now, it's our responsibility to get those that are not here right now and tell them, hey, why are you not here? Come on. Come on. We need to all be here together. And, the elders don't need to get up every single time and say, hey, you need to be here. I don't have to get up in the pulpit as frequently as I do and say, hey, you know what? This is what the Bible says. You need to be here. Every time I do that, I tell you what, I feel like I'm really getting places, because when I do that, when I have to say that, it's like, you know what? What am I doing? What am I doing up here? This is like the easiest thing to do. You should be here. You don't get that one. Yeah, I shouldn't have to tell people. It's kind of like saying, hey, you need to study your Bible. You shouldn't have to tell a Christian to do that. So, that very good class. Thank you for your comments, and appreciate your kind attention. We'll get to start right off next time in chapter 11, verse 1. The Hall of Fame.